I found my husband's diary and learned he wanted me to disappear so he could marry someone else. I left him with our baby and now I'm in charge of our business. My husband and I, both in our 30s, have been together for 4 years. He has a habit of writing in a journal occasionally, which he doesn't keep hidden. Despite my respect for his privacy, after a heated argument, I felt compelled to read it while he was at work. To my shock, I discovered he expressed hatred towards me, even wishing harm upon me during times of illness. Feeling hurt and betrayed, I immediately packed up myself and our baby and sought refuge at a friend's house. I took pictures of the journal pages and told my husband I needed space to cool off after our argument, assuring him I would return home soon. Meanwhile, I scheduled a session with my therapist and contacted a lawyer. Although we recently went through a rough patch lasting about 2 weeks, characterized by difficult conversations and emotional strain, there was no violence or fear between us. The notes of hatred in his journal seemed to align with this challenging period, while the rest of the entries reflected the caring and supportive man I know him to be. His journal mostly contained positive affirmations about work, family, and personal goals. Despite the hurtful revelation, my husband has been sending me warm messages, expressing his understanding of my need for space, and his eagerness to reconnect when I return. His reassurances and the overall tone of his journal entries have left me feeling conflicted about the future of our relationship. I get that people sometimes need to let off steam, and journaling can be a healthy outlet for that. But even in our toughest times, I've never wished harm upon my husband. This feels different, darker. I'm not sure how I could ever feel safe around him again. Am I overreacting? Has anyone else had similar thoughts about their spouse and moved past them? Or is he truly a threat to me and our baby? To provide context, the rough patch we went through was due to his feelings for another woman. While he didn't cheat, his close friendship with her made me uneasy. The part of his journal where he expresses hatred towards me was written as a love letter to her, where he talks about replacing me. It's unsettling. I've been married for 17 years and I've never felt such animosity towards my spouse. It's like he wanted me to find it, yet he doesn't know that I have. This situation feels like it's beyond repair. He wrote a love letter to another woman in his journal, and that speaks volumes about where his heart lies. I need to stay strong, consult with a lawyer, and prioritize the safety of myself and our child. While he's at work, gather more of your belongings. I'm sorry, but don't believe his words now. He's witnessing a strong woman standing up for herself, and reality is hitting him hard. Email those pictures to at least one person you trust before he finds out you've seen them. Update. Thank you all for the advice and encouragement. Some of it was tough to read, but I deeply appreciate it. I wanted to provide an update because many were concerned for my safety. Following a commenter's advice, I sent the pictures to a trusted friend. She pointed out that a passage I initially read as "every day I think about telling her" actually very clearly says killing her. This realization was shocking, but it may have saved my life. I called a crisis line and they were helpful in talking me through the shock. They also connected me with a center that's assisting me in getting more affordable legal help. I bought some more time for my husband, telling him I'm enjoying being out of town and would like to stay an extra night or 2. I have therapy tomorrow and an appointment with a social worker to make a safety plan. I feel supported by family, friends, and professionals, and I have absolutely zero regrets about reading his journal. My gut told me something was off, and I'm grateful I listened. Nothing about this marriage is worth risking my life to salvage. Just wanted to express my immense gratitude to this community for being a source of support during this challenging time. Your comments and messages have provided great comfort, and I'm deeply moved by the kindness of strangers on the internet. Following the suggestion of the social worker, I reported his journal to the local police. Unfortunately, the experience was less than ideal. The officer I spoke to scolded me for reading his journal, emphasizing his supposed expectation of privacy. Furthermore, he hinted at informing my husband about my report. Despite this, I firmly asserted my concerns for my safety. Now, at least there's a record, including photos of the journal. Upon consulting with our family lawyer, I've been advised to file a protection order immediately. This order would prohibit my husband from contacting me or our child, entering our residence or my workplace, and any other locations I specify. He would need to prove his fitness as a parent in court before any visitation could be considered. Additionally, we have the added complication of owning a business together. I have an upcoming appointment with another lawyer to explore my options in this regard. While the business was initially my idea and I believe I can manage it alone, his involvement and its role as our primary source of income pose significant concerns. He would fiercely oppose me on this matter. We alternate shifts at our workplace, so on Saturday, as usual, I went with a friend, armed with a baseball bat, maintaining the facade of reconciliation by engaging in video calls with our baby. While at our workplace, I stumbled upon another journal, filled with love letters to this other woman spanning months. His feelings progressed from casual encounters at the grocery store to longing drives past her house. He expressed deep love for her and anticipation of marrying her, detailing every interaction they ever had. It's evident she remains unaware, seeing his perceived flirtations as mere politeness. Disturbingly, he also mentioned wanting me to perish, with the latest entry from the day before discussing a potential breakup, which he seemed nonchalant about. He fretted only over losing assets and his public image. I'm contemplating whether to warn the other woman. My instinct leans towards waiting until legal matters are settled. I fear his reaction upon receiving a protection order, especially concerning our business and home. I devised a plan to confront him about the journals, leveraging the protection order. Leaving the journal and our baby with a friend, I went to our house with 2 trusted male friends and the baseball bat, while they waited on the porch. I warned my husband that if anyone heard anything louder than a normal conversation, they would enter with the bat. I informed him that I had something difficult to tell him, and that I'd taken measures to protect myself. I revealed that I had read the journals, specifically mentioning his disturbing thoughts about my demise and his contemplation of killing me daily. I explained that I had taken photos, backed them up, and shared copies with a trusted source. I also possessed the original journal filled with love letters. Until that moment, I had wondered if he had intended for me to find them, but his shock was evident. He attempted to dismiss it as venting, but I made it clear I wouldn't take any risks or entertain his excuses. After reading his words, I could never trust him or feel safe again. I emphasized that no one else knew about this, except for the men waiting on the porch, who believed I was breaking up with him and needed support. This was true, except for the friend I called to stay with and the one I sent photos to who lives far away. I offered to protect his reputation if he cooperated with me. I explained that I didn't have to ruin his chances with the other woman, but I could if necessary. I presented him with a choice: either meet my conditions for safety or face legal consequences. When he asked what I wanted, I requested that he relinquish control of the business. We would discuss details later, but for now, I needed his keys and would be changing all the passwords. He didn't resist at all. He avoided discussing the legal process and didn't inquire about our baby. He calmly handed over the keys and asked if there was anything else I needed. I made it clear that any communication should focus solely on logistics for separation. Since then, he's been bombarding my phone with messages, pleading to work things out and apologizing for hurting me. Each time I remind him of my boundaries, and he respects them. He's confided in his mom and sister, who are supporting him and assisting with getting help. He's been cooperative, seeking a new job, attending therapy sessions and updating me on his activities, although I didn't request it. For now, I've temporarily moved in with my parents, despite the longer commute to work. They're helping with the baby and providing home-cooked meals. I'm starting to establish new routines, focusing on therapy and yoga. I have a small cabin that I inherited before meeting my husband, which is being renovated. It's in my mother's name, as she wanted to protect it in case of divorce. I'm grateful for her foresight, as it will soon provide a permanent home for me and my baby. While there's still uncertainty and challenges ahead, I'm optimistic. I believe I'll emerge from this situation as a strong single mother, with a successful business and a cozy home. The prospect of having these things without my husband is liberating. I'm surrounded by a supportive community, and I'm grateful for all the encouragement. The fact that he's not putting up a fight is a huge relief in itself. If she informs the other woman, it could provoke him and endanger her and the baby. OP needs to prioritize her child's safety and avoid becoming a target. This is exactly where my thoughts are too. Since I don't know this woman, I can't trust her not to spread the information. I don't want it to reach him. His lawyer or social worker should handle it. He should share the details with either of them, and they can take appropriate action to inform the other woman. There's no need to complicate OP's life further or provide her soon-to-be ex-husband with ammunition. OP's lawyer agreed with this approach, suggesting it's best not to directly communicate with the other woman for now. The police are aware of the situation. To anyone else in a similar situation reading this, in my area, there's a legal center that offers emergency appointments daily at 2 p.m., and protection orders are processed the same day they're filed. This is my understanding, although I haven't filed one yet. As for therapy, I already have a regular therapist who has kindly offered additional support during this difficult time. Moving on to another story 2. I discovered that my wife cheated on me with my best friend, and here's how I handled it. We met 15 years ago at summer camp, where I had been attending since childhood. She was new to the area and the camp, and we had a summer fling. Despite not expecting much, we stayed in touch and ended up going to college in the same city. Our relationship evolved into something more serious, and we got married shortly after graduating. Everything seemed perfect between us until I genuinely loved her with all my heart, and I believed she felt the same. Together we had 2 children, and I had a stable job that allowed her to stay home and care for them full-time. It felt like living the perfect American dream. While my job didn't require frequent travel, there was an annual company retreat in the mountains. Ostensibly for team building, it was really just an excuse for everyone to unwind and drink for a whole weekend. I'd eagerly anticipated it each year. My best friend, let's call him Mark, also worked in the same office. We had met during our senior year of college and instantly clicked. I'd never connected with anyone like I did with Mark. We shared the same sense of humor and could talk about anything for hours. He even helped me secure my job at the firm, so I felt indebted to him for the wonderful life I had. I looked forward to spending more quality time with him during the company trip, and the week leading up to it, everyone in the office, including Mark, was buzzing with excitement. However, on the Friday before our departure, Mark didn't show up to work. Concerned, I reached out to him, and he explained he was suffering from a severe stomach bug. When I asked if he'd recover in time for the trip, he admitted he wouldn't be able to make it. While I was disappointed that Mark couldn't join us, I didn't let it dampen my excitement for the trip. I knew there would be plenty of other colleagues to enjoy the retreat with. Saturday morning arrived, and after bidding farewell to my wife, I set off for the trip. I had a fantastic time and never suspected anything untoward happening back home. After all, my wife was there with our kids. Throughout the weekend, I checked in on Mark a couple of times, sending him funny pictures and videos from the retreat. He assured me he was still bedridden, but appreciated the updates. Upon returning home Sunday night, I relaxed with my kids, recounting the highlights of the weekend. Despite the spotless house, my wife seemed preoccupied, constantly tidying up. Looking back, I realized she was likely avoiding me out of guilt. As it grew late, I tucked the kids into bed, cherishing the time I'd missed with them over the past couple of days. While I was kissing my son goodnight, he asked me if Uncle Mark would be visiting again soon. Initially, I assumed he missed seeing Mark and hadn't seen him in a while. I replied that I didn't know when Mark would visit next. However, my son then mentioned that Mark had promised to see him soon the day before. Confused, I asked if he had indeed seen Mark the previous day, and he confirmed it. This revelation left me puzzled. Mark had told me he was at home recovering from his stomach bug. If he was at my house, he had lied to me. This raised immediate suspicions because Mark wouldn't have lied unless he was doing something he shouldn't. Given our close friendship and trust, if he needed to stop by, I would have understood. Upon returning to our bedroom, I mentioned my son's words to my wife. She brushed it off, suggesting our son might have been mistaken or recalling a visit from weeks ago. However, our son was only 4 years old at the time, so it seemed unlikely he would mention something from so long ago. In that moment, I found myself more inclined to believe my son's words over my wife's explanation. However, lacking evidence to support my suspicions, I let it go. The following Tuesday, when I returned to the office, Mark was there, looking as usual. Still feeling uneasy, I casually inquired about his weekend, and he reiterated that he had been home resting the entire time. My intuition screamed that something was amiss, urging me to uncover the truth. A few nights later, my wife left her phone unattended in the living room while she did the dishes. Feeling conflicted but driven by a need for clarity, I discreetly took her phone to the bathroom. I sifted through her text messages with Mark, finding numerous deleted conversations that left me with a sinking feeling. My mind raced with possibilities of what those messages might have contained. At that point, I had little doubt it was evidence of an affair. Unlocking her hidden album, I discovered explicit photos of her and several pictures of a man with identifiable tattoos, which I recognized as Mark's. My suspicions were confirmed. They had been together while I was away for the weekend, likely aided by Mark feigning illness to avoid suspicion. The thought of their betrayal, especially while our children were at home, filled me with rage. Even my son had noticed Mark's presence during that time. I returned my wife's phone before she could notice its absence and retreated to bed early, consumed by thoughts of my next steps. Divorce seemed inevitable, and I harbored a deep resentment towards both my wife and Mark. Unsure of the specifics, I was determined to sever ties with Mark, whether by getting him fired or finding a new job myself. My mind raced with plans for revenge, focusing on exploiting Mark's flirtatious nature, particularly with a certain assistant he frequently interacted with in the break room during lunch. He was flirting with her, once again touching her on the shoulder and laughing with her. It wasn't anything harmful, but under the right circumstances it could be seen in a different light. I subtly took a couple of pictures of them while they were close together for later. When Mark left to go to a meeting, I talked to the assistant, and I asked her if she felt uncomfortable around Mark's. Sometimes she looked at me kind of confused. It was obvious from some of their conversations that she was into him as well. She told me that she wasn't uncomfortable. I planted a seed in her head that how much she flirted with her and touched her could be considered sexual harassment. She nodded her head like she was thinking about it for the first time. That same day, I went to our department and filed a formal complaint that I thought Mark's behavior was inappropriate. It was anonymous. To ensure anonymity, I filed the complaint anonymously, shielding myself from any repercussions. The next day proceeded as usual until Mark was called into the HR department for a meeting. In workplace scenarios like this, speculation ran rampant. Was it a reprimand or a promotion? Coincidentally, a sexual harassment seminar was scheduled for the following day, adding fuel to the gossip mill. Given Mark's recent interaction with HR, rumors began to swirl, implicating him in organizing the seminar. As conversations and rumors spread, the assistant, whom Mark had been flirting with, started confiding in others, expressing discomfort with his advances. Soon, the narrative of Mark's alleged sexual harassment took hold. Word eventually reached Mark, prompting him to confront me, believing I would be forthright about the allegations. When confronted, I remained noncommittal, casting doubt on his character given his involvement with my wife. Shocked by my revelation, Mark's discomfort escalated, leading him to tender his resignation. Meanwhile, I took decisive action, securing a skilled divorce attorney and serving my wife with divorce papers just days before Mark's resignation. Her shock at the revelation of her infidelity was palpable, but I remained resolute in my decision. Despite her attempts to portray me as the villain, I made it clear that my priority was retaining custody of our children, not abandoning them. Ultimately, the court's decision reflected the severity of her actions, denying her spousal support and granting me full custody of the children. Reflecting on the ordeal, I lamented the loss of not just a spouse but also a trusted friend. The betrayal by both my wife and Mark cut deep, leaving scars that would take time to heal. Before contemplating future relationships, I recognized the need to focus on personal growth and healing.